Hi there, it's Mr. Clark. Welcome to lesson 7.1.2 on cadences. We've seen cadences before in our ear tune projects, where a cadence is just the end of a phrase. And in this section, this lesson, we are going to deepen and expand our understanding of cadences. So we already know that an authentic cadence, or an AC, moves from 5 or 5/7 to 1, and it's a strong cadence. There are some subcategories of authentic cadences. So authentic cadences is our root. One kind of authentic cadence is a perfect authentic cadence. It's the strongest kind of authentic cadence, and it satisfies both of these conditions. The first condition is that both chords are in root position. So root position 5, root position 1, beautiful. The melody moves by step and ends on 1. So it has to go either 2 to 1 or 7 to 1. So here the melody goes 7 1, and here it goes 2 1, and both are in root position. So root position check, melody by step end on 1 check. So these are two examples of perfect authentic cadences. The other kind of authentic cadence is an imperfect authentic cadence, which is any authentic cadence that's not perfect. So either it's perfect or it's not. And if it's not, it's called imperfect. So if both chords are in root position, but the melody doesn't move by step, so root position, check, melody does not end on 1, darn. So it's not perfect, but it is an imperfect authentic cadence, and specifically, it's a strong imperfect authentic cadence because both of the chords are in root position. If one or both of the chords is in inversion, we call it contrapuntal, referring to counterpoint because both the top line and the bass line are moving stepwise like counterpoint does. So, wrong way. There we go. So here we have some contrapuntal. So let me play you these different kinds of cadences so you can hear the difference. So here we have, yeah, that sounds pretty fine. And then going the other way. Yeah, I dig that. So then our imperfect authentic cadence, the melody is going to be different. It's not going to end on 1. Ends on 3, or it could end on 5. The bass motion is still strong, that 5 to 5 to 1. There we go. And then our contrapuntal cadences, or, so the question I'm thinking of just now is, well, what if the bass moves by, the bass doesn't go 5-1, it's not both chords in root position, but the melody does move by step to 1. It would still be an imperfect authentic cadence because both conditions aren't satisfied, and it would still be contrapuntal because the bass moves by step. So the bass motion is the most important thing to think about in that case. So again, this is what our authentic cadence tree looks like. Either perfect or imperfect. If it's imperfect, it'll either be strong or contrapuntal. There's only one kind of perfect authentic cadence because it's perfect. Why would you change anything? The other kind of cadence we've seen before is a half cadence. It's any cadence that ends on 5. Often, the 5 chord will be in root position. Often, scale degree 2 will be in the melody, but neither of those is required. Any chord can come before it. It's a weaker cadence because it doesn't feel like the piece is going to end. It feels like it has to keep going some way. So here's an example of a half cadence in C major. So we're starting on a 4 chord, and then we go to a 5/4. Beautiful. And the same thing in C minor. And it wants to go here. Yeah. There is one specific kind of half cadence that has a special name. Just like you can have a bunch of, I don't know, different birds, and then this is a flamingo. It's not that the other birds don't have names. Well, actually, in this case, it is. That's not a great analogy. Imagine no birds had names except for the flamingo, and everything else was just a bird. That's what's going on here, where there are plenty of half cadences like these that don't have specific names, but this is a flamingo. It's not a flamingo, it's a Phrygian half cadence, or a PHC. And it is specifically 4/6-5 in minor, where you have a first inversion 4 chord, moving to 5. And the reason it's called a Phrygian half cadence is because the Phrygian mode is characterized by flat 2 going to 1, flat 2, flat 2 going to 1. And it replicates that motion, except it's flat 6 to 5 here, but that's why it's called a Phrygian half cadence. Typically, the soprano moves from 4 to 5. Not necessary, it just has to be this specific progression in minor. To successfully voice lead it, based on rules we haven't actually covered yet, you'll probably want a double scale degree 1, which I've done here, in the 4-6 chord. But we'll talk more about that later. If a half cadence is not a Phrygian half cadence, it doesn't get a special name, it's just a half cadence. Great. Here's a new kind of cadence, a Plagal Cadence. It might not actually be new, I don't remember if we talked about it before. If it's not new, great, it's a review. So, Plagal Cadence goes from 4 to 1, or for in minor. And Plagal cadences are most common in hymns and religious music as well as popular music. It's sometimes called the Amen cadence because if you have an Amen at the end of a religious tune, it's probably going to be set to these chords. It's stronger than a half cadence because it does end on 1, but it's not as strong as an authentic cadence because you don't have that resolution of 7 to 1. This last kind of cadence is definitely new. We haven't talked about it before. It's a DC, a deceptive cadence, because it deceives you. So, you start on a 5 chord, so let's say, cool, we're starting on a 5 chord, and you know where it wants to go. It wants to go to 1, but it's going to deceive you, so it's not going to go to 1. It's going to go to a chord that's very similar to 1, which is 6. And the reason it can do that is because 7 still goes to 1. The only difference here is that instead of 5 going to 1, 5 has gone to 6 instead. That's literally the only difference. But that makes it a deceptive cadence. So same sort of thing in minor, where you start on a 5 chord, 5-7 in this case. You go to a flat 6. Beautiful. And I have a meme here. This is probably breaking copyright law. I don't know. Are memes copyrighted? Not in a normal way. We're fine. So, we've talked about several different kinds of cadences, so this is their strength from weak to strong. Your deceptive cadence is your weakest cadence, because it doesn't end on 1 and it doesn't set up 1. It's like you're about to have a cadence and then it veers off and goes somewhere else. It's more common to find deceptive cadences in the middle of a phrase, which doesn't actually make sense. You would use a deceptive cadence to extend a phrase past where you would expect it to go, because you're expecting it to cadence, expecting it to end on 1, but instead you detour and you keep going. So that's why it's the weakest. Then a half cadence does actually end a phrase. Plagal cadence actually ends on 1. Contrapuntal, imperfect authentic cadence, goes 5-1 in some way. Strong, well, now they're in bass, and now they're in root position. Now perfect, now the melody ends on 1 and moves by step. An important point I'd like to make before we're done is that not every pair of chords is a cadence. If you see, like, 1, 5, 7, 1, and that's all you have, then yeah, that's probably a cadence. But if it keeps going, I don't know. Cool, there's a progression. That doesn't make that an authentic cadence if it doesn't end a phrase. A cadence has to end a phrase. So you would want to find where the phrases are and then determine what cadences are at the end of them, rather than vice versa and go cadence hunting and then say, well, there's a cadence there, so that has to be where the phrase ends. Doesn't quite work like that. That's all I got for now. See you next time.